Well, there's no other way around it. It might look ugly at times for you, but Tennessee has just defeated Florida and Alabama in consecutive weeks. And now Alabama 2 times in a row in trips to Neyland Stadium. So we dive into the game. We will have torchbearers and more. We've got a loaded show as we break down Tennessee's 24-17 win, in which Nico Iamaleava was going to be the topic of discussion, but we'll get into that narrative. This is clearly, I believe, about Tennessee's defense just being that good, keeping them in games when for 3 consecutive games, Tennessee has not scored a point in the first half. That hasn't happened since 1963. So, Caleb, a monster, gutsy win by Tennessee that could have gone either way, but I'll give you these 2 assertions right off the bat. Tennessee beat Alabama with a better coach, a better head coach, and better quarterback play. And I don't know when we've last said that in this series. How are you, sir?
I am good. How are you doing?
I'm well. Fortunately, my column was right on the money because I thought that Tennessee was going to pull that out. So I didn't have to suddenly rewrite. It'll be up shortly on Off the Hook Sports, as will content from Caleb Calhoun and Jimmy Himes. Hit that like and subscribe button if you're happy about the Vols beating Alabama. And certainly there are still some questions, but if you made me bet right now who wins the most games in the next 3, 4, 5 years, I think that guy was wearing orange. I think that there is not a distinctly clear coaching advantage at this point, but I believe it's going to prove to be that sort of an advantage moving forward. The last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Instant reaction is right now. And look at me, no contacts, no glasses. Why? Because Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. I had my LASIK vision correction done there. Let's get on the message board. Let's get excited. Tennessee fans, you have deserved this for well over a decade. In some ways, this is almost more gratifying than 2022, because had they lost today, the expectations were so high, Caleb. Your college football playoff chances are probably in the toilet, and Tennessee keeps those alive, and now, according to ESPN, has a 70% chance of making the college football playoff. So what are your thoughts as you come away from this game that certainly could have gone either way, but likely ended Alabama's chances for making the college football playoff?
Well, I'm not so sure it did end Alabama's chances on making the college football playoff. We can get into that, but they had it could have ended Tennessee's chances, but I actually think Alabama, because of that quality win over Georgia, still has more to rest on. Tennessee needed this game more than Alabama did.
I agree, but if I ask you to lay a wager right now, considering the odds, which are not going to be in Alabama's favor, considering the way that team was coached, if I ask you to make an even-up bet they'll make the playoffs or won't, what would you say?
Okay, I'm not trying to Vol Homer this, but I would bet they would make the playoff, and I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
I think, and I don't know, I wanted to. I'm with you. When Nico Iamaleava threw that touchdown pass to Chris Brazo, and we'll get to this, I'm like, oh my gosh, Nico Iamaleava. It started with the Dante Thornton pass. I'm like, he's found his rhythm. He's come alive. This is the Nico we expected to see. But the way the defense closed that game, Tennessee needs to make Tim Banks the highest paid assistant coach in the history of college football. That is the best called defensive game I have ever watched. And I'm not kidding you guys on that. That was what they basically said was, if we bring pressure but also focus on containment, have a couple of spies over the middle, Jalen Milroe will not be able to complete passes from the pocket. And Dave, how many easy passes were there for Jalen Milroe that he just missed over the middle?
Oh, there were a lot. He was completely confused at the end of the game, and it was noticeable not just on the last drive when he threw the pick to Will Brooks. I don't know what they dialed up differently on about the last 3 drives, maybe 2, Caleb, but whatever they dialed up was different than what he saw the rest of the day, because he was semi-comfortable for the first 3.5 quarters or so. I mean, he wasn't great.
He was comfortable.
He wasn't great, but I don't expect him to be great. I guess it depends on your expectations. I thought he was a C plus, B minus quarterback. At the end, though, it looked like he didn't know what the test was all about. They did something different on those last couple 3 drives.
And here's where the applause comes, and this is what they did. Tim Banks never stopped bringing pressure. Here was the crazy part, Dave. 4th and 22. Tim Banks has a blitz on. Josh Heupel, I don't know why, calls a timeout, because I thought Tennessee had the perfect play to stop Alabama. You know what Tim Banks does out of the timeout? He dials up another blitz. All conventional wisdom in the history of college football is all, drop 8, drop 9, defend the 4th and 22, and Tim Banks says, heck no, I'm bringing the house. And you're right. Jalen Milroe was confused. I think he was feeling the pressure, one, and I think the containment took away his running ability. Dave, the story of the game, Jalen Milroe had 14 carries for 11 yards. He was sacked twice. And I'm going to say it, Tennessee, not Vanderbilt, by the way, Tennessee knocked Jalen Milroe out of the Heisman race. His Heisman campaign's over.
I agree. Ahmad, thank you for the super chat. That goes to Quincy Calhoun's college fund, now 4 months old. So we're working towards that one step at a time. When you figure compound interest, that $9.99 could probably get him into Pellissippi State Community College one day. But he had to say, for some reason, I can't get it to pull up. Okay, there it is. I said it's great to be a Tennessee Vol. Don't gamble it away, Caleb. Just kidding. I have to make good on my promise to donate every time our Vols win. It feels amazing to be a Vol, y'all. It should. And I know that everybody wants to see this high-flying offense that you saw in 2022. But, Caleb, that's just not who these Vols are. It's time to change that narrative. Now, with another off week, playing some opponents that you could probably tinker with a little bit, like maybe UTEP, but Vandy and Kentucky aren't bad. Having time before a college football playoff, I guess there's still a chance that Tennessee could get elite quarterback play. But I think right now with this defense and running game, you'd settle for just very good quarterback play because celebrate, and I want Tennessee fans to celebrate, but Nico still didn't look comfortable for the vast majority of that game.
Well, yes, but Dave, he looked comfortable after that 55-yard pass to Dante Thornton. From that point on, Nico had command of the offense. And I don't like to spoil what I would usually say, but Nico was he was 9 of 20 for 109 yards before that pass to Dante Thornton. And then he was 5 of 7 for 85 yards afterward. I mean, that touchdown pass to Chris Brazzell, it was a work of art. Honestly,
that was a beautiful ball, but he missed an earlier ball. I guess you and I may differ here. So if we do,
we don't differ. He was horrible.
Okay.
Until that pass to Thornton.
Okay, but that's what I want. That's where I think we may be different. Let me find out, and we'll make this a poll question. And I want to remind you that the show, The Last Look, is provided to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. So the poll question is now, and then I want to turn it more towards Nico. Go ahead, Caleb. What's the poll question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were. I apologize. I didn't realize you were asking me the poll question. So the poll question. Well, the poll question right now is trying to pull it up. I apologize, guys. The MVP of the Bama game: Tim Banks, Nico, Josh Heupel, Jalen Milroe, and Alabama. And rightly so, Tim Banks gets 88%. And that is true. Tim Banks deserves... Guys, he's not going to be at Tennessee after this year. I'm sorry. I can just tell you right now. He's getting
heading into 2025 or...
Yeah, heading into 2025.
He'll have an option. Again, I think you and I have discussed this before. There are some options given to African-American quarterbacks that they shouldn't take. And he seems like a...
coaches, you mean?
What's that?
African-American coaches, you mean?
What did I say?
You said quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah. No, that's good. But assuming he gets a South Florida or better job, I would think he would take it. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. And in all fairness, he may want to ride this out a little bit. Imagine if you're Tim Banks thinking, my stock is high this year, but what if those guys on offense can control the ball for just a little bit and Nico can make some plays? His stock could be sky high after a redshirt sophomore season by Nico if he shows that type of improvement. So I'm going to ask you this, and I think we're going to differ on this, and let's make it the poll question. Today's tough question brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, so let's do this. I want to make it real simple because it sounds like to me that Caleb believes this is the case. So I just want to ask Caleb this question. Did Nico turn a corner tonight? In other words, does the narrative of Nico continue to improve? I'm not saying that he turns into Joe Montana in a couple of weeks as Tennessee has a bye, but is this the turning point for Nico?
Yes, I think it is. You are in the game of your life. You get knocked out in the first half, and quite honestly, Dave, when he got knocked out before Gaston Moore threw that interception, which by the way, the touchdown was there. That was a massive underthrow. Rubicoy had both defenders beat. But when Gaston Moore comes in, many Tennessee fans are actually thinking, not a big deal. Like, okay, Gaston Moore, like this offense, it can't be any worse. Moore throws an interception. Nico comes in, throws an interception in the red zone the next drive, struggling severely. And what happens late in the third quarter? You see it. I saw it. I was watching with my wife. I said, they're doing one-on-one coverage on the outside. They don't trust Nico at all. And Nico drops a floater to Dante Thornton that Thornton catches. And from that then on out, he has total command of the offense. I don't just mean throwing the ball. I mean, he actually made the right reads on RPOs. He had quite a few decent runs after that, Dave. I think he had like 3 runs, and he finished the game with 44 rushing yards. So I think that was the turning point for Nico. That was the Nico we saw against Iowa in the Citrus Bowl after that. And I think now, again, I think you're going to start seeing quite a few more. I think you're going to see him in much more of a rhythm now, honestly, after that. And
okay, I'm not willing to go there. I think Tennessee's going to have to still win a couple of their games ugly this season. I don't believe he's going to go ball out against Georgia. You probably agree with that. I mean, the defense is going to have to lead them to a victory there. I think he's going to have another game that he will struggle. But I'll give you this. The alternative would have been this guy may never, ever, ever get his confidence back and certainly won't get it back this year. That's where I think Tennessee would have been. Had he thrown a pick at the end, and you're overlooking the Chris Brazzell throw to his right down the sideline. That would have been a big pass that's in the middle of when you're talking about that he was coming back. I think his confidence.
That wasn't as bad as the miss in the first half, though, where he had the guy wide open over the middle.
Yeah, but a miss is still a miss. I mean, if he had left this game with a loss and he blamed himself, I wonder if he'd ever have his confidence back, ever. Now, much less this year. I know they have a bye week, but that's a long bye week to soak in that loss. So, but Caleb sees it as a turning point. Let's update the poll question as we remind you. Last Look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and on CCTeyes.com. CCTeyes.com. Enjoy life better when you see better. Last Look, Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and on.
The first step to better vision is to visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at ccteyes.com.
The poll question is, what, Caleb, do people agree with you? Did Nico turn the corner, yay or nay?
And people agree with me. 60% say yes, it's on. And 40% say, no, I still need to see more. So 60% are on my side. Yes, it's on. He turned the corner. His confidence is there. Now, to bolster your point, Dave, the person who doesn't have confidence in him is Josh Heupel. Because Josh Heupel, once Tennessee got the ball with the 21-17 lead, took the ball completely out of Nico's hands. Didn't even give him a chance to get a first down to clinch the game. And
whoa. He kept throwing the ball deep when Nico couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. You talk about somebody that had faith in Nico. I would have shut it down and run the ball in the middle of the second quarter. He kept taking those shots, and they were off.
But at the end of the game, the last 2 drives, Josh Heupel said, you know what? I'm going to make the defense get 2 stops. I'd rather trust them to get 2 stops than I would rather Nico even try to get a first down. I thought Josh Heupel made a mistake going for it on that field goal. I'm kicking that field goal. I thought he should have gone for it, honestly.
Okay, I just disagree with all that.
But
I got you got to kick the field goal to go up 7. Your defense is playing so good. You didn't need a Will Brooks interception to win that game. At that point, your odds of winning, if you play conservative, are 85% or better.
I think they're still. I think again, you're still giving your defense. Where are we getting this? You're not giving your defense a chance to win the game if you don't get the field goal. I mean, you're still giving them the chance to win the game. Alabama still needs a touchdown to win, but it doesn't matter. You're right. Will Brooks got the interception. We can talk about that on Monday. But Dave, funny enough, before that pass to Thornton, I actually had a column written. You know what it was? It was the worst quarterback lost this game, not the better quarterback won this game. And I kind of ripped that one up.
Still kind of true.
Yes, Jalen Milroe lost it more than Nico won it. I agree. The big thing that was key was Tennessee they never let Jalen Milroe get the big play. He had one good drive, but he never hit, like, you know what I'm talking about, Dave, that 55-yard pass that Jalen Milroe always hits. I mean, what's his long of the day?
Run. He didn't do that either. And I thought it was pretty obvious. And I thought there were 2 narratives that played out in this game that I wrote about. One was Tennessee was out to out-physical Alabama. They knocked Ryan Williams around. They hit Jalen Milroe a lot. You talked about the constant pass pressure. That was a physical football game where Tennessee took the fight to them. And even though Tennessee won in 2022, there were a lot of big plays there. I don't want to discount that win from a physical standpoint, but this was something different. And I thought the other narrative was, could Nico make either, depending on how you want to look at it, Caleb, enough plays or avoid enough mistakes to allow Tennessee's defense to win the game? You and I see it a little bit different, so I tried to come at it from both sides.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I think you see more as like Nico managed this game, but see, I'm not seeing that. I don't think Nico managed the game in the third and into the fourth quarter, honestly. And I think from that, Dylan Samson, I mean, Nico's responsible for 2 touchdown drives in this game in within a quarter, within a 15-minute span.
But okay, but maybe we can come to terms on this. And this isn't fair, but I'm going to throw this out there. If Hendon Hooker was the quarterback, he would have led the Vols to 4 touchdown drives against Alabama.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, not in the final quarter and a half. I mean, Nico only had like
throughout the game, the missed deep balls.
Well, yes, I'm not here defending how Nico played the whole game. He was garbage for the first 43 minutes, 42 minutes. I mean, he was absolutely garbage. I mean, again, there was that interception, I think he was just desperately trying to make a play that he shouldn't have been trying to make a play when he was under pressure. But that missed throw, like over the middle in the first half, was horrible. And for the record, I want to point this out before we go any further. We got to give a lot of credit to John Campbell and Lance Hurd in this game. They weren't great.
No.
They weren't bad. They weren't atrocious.
That's fair. I will take I'll probably, out of those 2 particularly, I would take a C+ for the rest of the season. And knowing that you'll get an A+ from the interior and you're probably a B offensive line, somewhere in there. That's what I would, if you told me right now that you could get a C+ from John Campbell and Lance Hurd, which is about what they were, would you take that, Caleb, for the remainder of the season?
Oh, absolutely. I would definitely take that. Yeah, I would take, and I think that's what they gave you today. The misses by Nico weren't because he was under pressure. Can we at least say that? It wasn't because there was a blown protection and assignment.
No. And Kyle, you're right. You can't compare Nico to Hooker at this point. I completely agree. We put too much on him. I've heard the whole day how the media overhyped him and all of that. Now, Jared does bring up a good point that we're making different arguments, but we're strengthening each other's points, which is weird. I guess that's a sign of mutual respect. Nico grew up when he went out on the hit. Well, not immediately, because he came back and
He missed a few things.
A few things there. But I do wonder if it was kind of like, to bleep with this. You know, you still, despite getting knocked out of the game, despite not playing well, you still have the opportunity to beat Alabama. And I do think all that had piled up against him previously, Caleb, was a true factor in how he responded. And I had somebody that texted me or tweeted me at one point and said just doesn't have heart or leadership. Well, you have to take that back now, right?
Oh, you absolutely do. And I would never say that, because if he doesn't have heart, here's how you can tell he has heart and leadership. And Dave, I've said this for a long time with quarterbacks. It's not always so much how they play when they make mistakes. It's how everybody else plays around them. And if you look at how hard Dylan Samson run and how hard the line blocks, there's heart. That comes from heart and leadership of the quarterback. Now, I want to defend Nico too on the other side. Dave, we have to give Nico a pass on this. I counted 3 drop passes in the first half.
Oh,
you know, I mean, what was the one? Was it Chris Browser where he came back and Nico hit him right in the chest?
Yep.
And it just bounced right off. At some point,
well, yeah, the other one, the Brew McCoy in the slant in the end zone.
Yeah, no, that's true. And so it's
the one that I'm going to chide Tennessee's coaching staff is the drop by Squirrel White. I don't think he should be out there. I think when he's in the air like that, trying to pull in the ball, it's painful to get his arm above his shoulder. He's got a dislocated shoulder. You've got to think subconsciously about falling on that thing. I don't think he needs to go out there for the remainder of the season if it's as bad as it looks. And just good for him, man. He's fighting and he's hard, but sometimes, Caleb, you have to protect players from themselves.
Yeah, I agree. And particularly, not just from themselves. You just got the win over Alabama. You got to buy. You want Squirrel White fully healthy if you're in the college football playoff race at the end of the year.
Amen. Amen. And listen, again, total kudos to him. And I don't even count that as a drop, because I can't imagine being in the air, contorting your body with a bad shoulder and thinking, when I land, this is really going to hurt. And I'm sure they're shooting him up with everything they can. But he doesn't need to be out there. All right, Caleb, where are we going from?
So some takeaways.
Yeah, your takeaways. All right, so let's go. How many takeaways we got?
Got 5 takeaways.
All right, so you're going to have to combine one because we got 4 downs.
That's
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Yeah, Ted is on a roll here. He said, I thought the officials were going to be the stars of the game. And then he said, it would be Nimrod that replaces Squirrel, I believe. It would. That's why Squirrel is out there. Nothing against Nimrod, but Squirrel is a different level of player. Would you agree with that?
yes, totally different type of player.
Even injured.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right, give me a couple takeaways, Caleb.
Coop here. First down.
All
right. So since it's 2, I want to do like the 2 that are just too obvious that we don't have to talk about and flesh out too much. So penalties were horrendous for both teams. Alabama 15 for 115 yards, but Tennessee 11 for 95. You can't have that many penalties at home, and most of them were good calls. I'm sorry, guys, they were. And also,
I thought, though, as a whole, the officiating was horrible. I thought there was a bad spot. I thought James Pierce was offsides.
I'm about to get to that.
Okay,
So save my takeaway.
I just thought they were too intrusive in the game for me. I mean, that's just a lot of penalties.
I'm going to get to that, but Tennessee fans may not like what I say on that. But I am going to say first, penalties were horrendous for both teams, and turnovers. Tennessee kept Alabama in it because they had 3 turnovers. Yes, Alabama had that interception at the end, but up until that, Tennessee had 3 turnovers. Alabama's just 1 because Tennessee did almost outgain them by 100 yards. So kind of basic stuff, penalties and turnovers you don't want to have.
Okay, what do you got next?
Those are 2 I need to
Okay, all right, next down, Coop. Oh.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Go. What do you got?
All right, I'm sticking with the negative for a minute, guys, but the officiating was really skewed towards Tennessee in this game. Tennessee benefited way more from Alabama in this game. And I know you're talking about the bad spot with Jalen Milroe. That was a terrible spot. But then you're right, James Pierce was clearly offside. Ricky Gibson got away with the most clearest day holding penalty I think I've ever seen on the driver Alabama had to settle for a field goal. You know the one I'm talking about, Dave?
Yes.
And And then where the Alabama player faked an injury and the refs accidentally called offsides on that. Look, you can hate faking injuries all the time. That's allowed. That's not an offside penalty.
Well, they call it illegal substitution.
Illegal substitution. Excuse me. That's not illegal substitution.
You're right, but I swear that was kind of like, I'm so frustrated by this stuff. I can't take it anymore. Like the officials on the spot were like that. You're right. It's the wrong call, and there's not a rule. Elias, thank you for the super chat to.
They tried to punish Kalen DeBoer for taking advantage of a rule they don't like. You can't do that as the officials. That's not your job. And then the last one, I'm sorry, but Boo Carter should have been flagged for a personal. It should have been an offsetting penalty on that 4th and 22. It shouldn't have been 4th and 22. That should have been an offsetting penalty. That's very much Dallas Baker, Jonathan Wade, Tennessee, Florida, way back in 2004. Okay, you have to offset those penalties. The refs were horrible and Game No Bueno is right. The refs made up for last year when they basically gave the game to Alabama late. This time, guys, I'm not saying they gave the game to Tennessee, but man, the officiating was skewed towards Tennessee in this game.
Yeah, I just thought it was bad as a whole. I mean, how many penalties did they end up having? Or did the officials end up calling? It was over 16, wasn't it? I mean, there's no way the game was that poorly played.
I think it might have been, actually. This was an ugly football game, guys. This is an ugly football game. I haven't seen a Tennessee-Alabama game this ugly since, man, I sound like, how am I the youngest one and I sound like the old guy? I haven't seen this back since this day and age. And I do that all the time on the show, but I haven't seen a Tennessee-Alabama game this ugly since the 2005 6-3 game where, Mike Shula,
I was going to go back further, the 9-6 game.
1990.
I was barely old enough to remember that. I remember my parents couldn't find a sitter, so I was at a party, an adult party, which was weird for like a 14-year-old.
Oh my gosh! Wait, I want to hear about this adult party. Adult parties for hookers, baby. Let's go. Let's go.
28 penalties altogether. Is that right, Kyle?
I think it was 25. No, 26. 26 penalties altogether. But yeah, I think it was ugly since you're right, the 1990, but the 2005 game was super ugly. That was remember Lucas Taylor getting on his knees to field a punt and fumbling it, and then Corey Anderson. Randy Sanders with probably the greatest play call of his life on a screen pass to Corey Anderson that should go for a touchdown, but Corey Anderson fumbles it out of the back of the end zone.
Yeah, that kid was bawling after that game. I felt so sorry for him. He was a local AE kid, went to Austin East, had overcome a lot. That's one of those where, given the backstory, I wanted to cry with him. That was just awful. After seeing Kalen DeBoer up close, the poll question is, what do you think? Great hire for the Vols. Still a good coach with a new team. I think it's a great hire for the Vols. I saw some. Listen, I've been as critical of Josh Heupel as anybody at times because I don't think he's adjusted and played this 12 personnel enough and relied on running the football, Caleb. And I disagree a little bit on that, but nevertheless, that's where I stand. I still will say this. Josh Heupel has never looked lost on the sidelines like Billy Napier did last week and Kalen DeBoer did this week.
I think you have to be fair. And I'm going to be fair. I watched this game. This was more about Jalen Milroe playing bad football. I can't put Kalen DeBoer and Billy Napier in the same sentence. I thought Kalen DeBoer kind of knew what he was doing. I just think he's got a quarterback that's not a fit for what he wants to run. Billy Napier lost that game for Florida last week. I went back and watched it again, Dave, and I got to be honest. There's no reason Tennessee should have won that game. They won it because Billy Napier coached it away. I don't think Kalen DeBoer coached this game away. I'm going to be honest.
Do me a favor if you can. In the message board, I just want to hear this. Or click the thumbs up button. Either way. Because my guy, Caleb Calhoun, did a darn good job and I agreed with him. I didn't argue with him, but I wanted to see what would happen. But he said in the offseason that he didn't think Jalen Milroe was a good fit for this offense. And we can discuss why if you want to now, but it's an offense that's more predicated on reading and being able to make plays and progressions. If that wasn't woefully obvious in the last 7.5 minutes of that football game, I don't know what was, because I felt like there were times where Jalen Milroe dropped back and saw 28 defenders, and he didn't know where to go with the football. And given his athletic ability, why didn't he just roll out and run at times? I'll
tell you why. I think that's obvious.
I'll give credit to Tim Banks, but still, to me, it was just an absolutely display of quarterbacking by Jalen Milroe at the end.
It was terrible. I think Tim Banks knew what Jalen Milroe was. Did you notice there were moments where he had James Pierce and Joshua Josephson at the same time? Which he doesn't usually do.
Yes.
That was because he wanted the athleticism on the outside. That totally took away Jalen Milroe's ability to run. That just completely. Usually you have one like kind of more power end on one side and an edge rusher on the other. He was putting 2 edge rushers out there. And I mean, guys, go back and watch. It is one of the most brilliantly called defensive games I have ever watched in football.
I want to credit Tennessee's defensive line, which is all about getting to the passer, right?
Yeah.
That's how they were built, because they were supposed to be up by 30 points at the end of every
You're just stealing my takeaways when you're asking me about them.
Oh, sorry. But I thought their gap discipline was incredible. What down are we on in fourth downs?
No, it's third.
4 downs? Huh? That was third?
Third. This is third right now.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. 3rd down.
If you say gap discipline, then I'm sorry. I took that from you.
No, you usually say gap integrity. I like that one better. But going to that, the line of scrimmage play was the difference on both sides of the ball. Tennessee, I mean, it's old school SEC football. And when I say line of scrimmage play, Dave, I don't mean just the offensive versus defensive lines. I mean the defensive front 7 versus the offensive lines and tight ends and running backs. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I mean the whole unit. Tennessee won that. Tennessee won the ground and pound game. They did. And I can just give you some stats. Yes, Alabama did have 1 more sack, but Dave, here's a crazy stat for you that I don't know if you know. Outside of Alabama did have 3 sacks. You want to know? But they only had 2 hurries. Tennessee, guess how many hurries they had in the game?
I would say 12.
You nailed it. They had 12 hurries and also 3 sacks. So their pass rush was better. On top of that, they just ran the ball better. Dylan Samson the team as a whole had over 200 rushing yards. That's a Josh Heupel offense. Alabama, Dave, had 34 carries for 75 yards. Jamarian Miller had just 12 carries for 42 yards. Justice Haynes, 8 carries for 22 yards. Alabama couldn't run the ball. Tennessee could, and Tennessee really started to pick it up in the second half. And I tweeted, Nostradamus Caleb. I tweeted after the Dylan Samson fumble on the first drive. You know what I tweeted, Dave?
I don't know. What did Nostradamus tweet?
Did you just say Nostradamus? Well played. Okay. All right. I said, you heard it here first, more positive than negative for the Vols. Yeah, more positive than negative for Vols on that first drive, despite the Samson fumble. They added the stretch run play to counter the new defensive looks at them. It allowed a whole new element to their offense in this game. And did it add a whole new element to their offense? Yes, it did. Because the only reason Tennessee didn't score more the way they should have is they had turnovers in this game, unlike the last few games. But they went for over 400 yards of offense, which is what they want to do in a game like this. And I think it was those stretch run plays. And they won the line of scrimmage. The interior of Tennessee's offensive line was elite once again, and the tackles played a C game. And Dave, again, I feel like we're regularly seeing A+ games from the interior of Tennessee's offensive line. Just regularly. It's almost becoming expected.
Oh, that's why, and maybe you disagree with it. That's why I would so many times play to that strength. I would continue to play to that strength, and maybe to a fault, Caleb. I'd run the ball between the tackles a lot. I like what you said about the outside zone runs and things that we're doing and pulling people, and I thought that was great. But ultimately, it's kind of like when you have steak and eggs for breakfast. The potatoes, those side potatoes, they're nice, but really, what are you there for? You're there for the steak and eggs.
That's true, but you have to, if the steak and eggs aren't...
You have to get your carbs in.
You got to get your carbs in. And the outside runs are just to keep them honest. Because guess what? After those outside runs, Alabama couldn't... Now, Alabama didn't run much of a 3-3-5 in this game anyway, to be fair. They weren't doing what other teams were doing against Tennessee.
It's funny. Somebody said earlier this week, and I can't remember who it was, but it was a Tennessee player that said structurally they're really not like that. You can't just up and run a completely different defense. Just like, you recruit to your personnel so that, you can, like it was pointed out, two coaches in Sam Pittman and Billy Napier wanted to save their job. But if you do that at Alabama, where you still have a college football playoff position to play for, it feels like desperation leading into the Tennessee game. You see how
it absolutely feels like desperation. I totally agree. And I mean, you're right. And you can't just throw that in. And that one of the great points you bring up is that, look, maybe they would do better against this 3-3-5 if they had more time to prepare for it. But throw the last 2 weeks out, guys. I'm telling you right now that Tennessee beat Alabama 21-17 and Nico Iamaleava had a touchdown pass. Are you not happy? Are you not happy? I mean, are you not entertained?
Yeah, and I want to say this too. Dylan Samson, let's start having this conversation, is the most impactful player that Tennessee has had since Al Wilson. Because when they absolutely, I'm sorry to interrupt, when they absolutely had to get some momentum and make a play, Al Wilson was there back in the day. Now it feels like they hand the ball to Dylan Samson and the offense gets rolling somehow.
You know what's crazy is Dylan Samson doesn't play like an all-purpose back because Dylan Samson is wearing teams down and being a workhorse back. He's getting his yards in the second half, and I didn't think I'd see this, but he's doing it. And Dylan Samson today, for those who don't know, I think he got his 17th touchdown, which tied Reggie Cobb for second most all-time in Tennessee history. Guys, there's a whole month of football left to play. More than a whole month of football left to play. Tennessee still got 5 games left on the schedule.
And remind people, for those that don't know, who holds the record, halfback Gene McEver.
Gene McEver, yeah. Set that record in 1929. And I believe it was 18 touchdowns. And by the way, the only reason he set that record was because he had 5 touchdowns in the final game of the year against South Carolina. So, guys, Dylan Samson is really, really making a push for... I mean, we're talking about greatest running back seasons in Tennessee history. I honestly, we're really on that. We're really talking about that now.
I really think it goes beyond that. I think you have to start comparing him to some of the all-time great single-season performers at other positions, such as quarterback, such as I mentioned at middle linebacker. I think it's already beyond that. And
have you ever seen a running back that's a leader the way he is? Like, I think that's what's so rare about him. It's Dylan Samson is actually a leader of this offense and a leader of this team. And I mean, guys, I'm owning all
running backs that are bad leaders. I'm not going to out them right now, but there were a couple in that Kelly Washington team that we talked about that were far more problems than he was.
I can believe that. But running backs, you don't expect to be leaders. You expect them to just be good teammates and go about doing their business, typically. Dylan Samson is, like, for instance, Travis Henry in 2000. He went about doing his business. How he did it better than anybody. No one ran harder than Travis Henry, so I think people love him because he went extremely hard on every play. And I know there's a bunch of jokes there because of his, all the kids he has, but he ran extremely hard. But he wasn't like, you weren't going to look to Travis Henry to galvanize that team, were you? Ever?
Not from a leadership standpoint.
No.
Not stand in front of the room and say, rally behind me, where I think Dylan Samson has done that on several occasions. And I'm not just talking about games this season. I'm talking about in practices where maybe they were dogging it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I think Dylan Samson's done that a lot, and I got to give him all the credit in the world. Guys, no one lit into him more than me. But you guys have to give me credit. What he was doing was he was listening to our podcast, and he was saying, I'll show Caleb.
Yes. Actually, he tunes in live every day. He got his class schedule moved so that he could be here at 10. Sometimes he has to leave practice early, but he's always a part of the program. All right, we got another down to get to, brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
All right, what's your final takeaway before we get to the turning point? There were about 18, so good luck narrowing that down to 1.
Oh, that's easy for me. It's easy for me, and I'll get to that. But it's Nico Iamaleava's turn to corner. And Dave's going to disagree with me. Dave, you can play Tracy Morgan all you want for that, but Nico Iamaleava has officially turned a corner, guys.
That's the takeaway? That's the turning point, or both?
That's my takeaway. That's my takeaway.
Okay, I'm not going to say you're crazy. I think there's a chance that that's the case. But right now, I don't believe his tough days are over. I think this is an improvement. I think this defense was way overrated in the preseason. Angie says, yes, both teams looked horrible. Yeah, Angie, you're pretty much right. But I understand why one team looks horrible, and that's Tennessee, because it's a young quarterback. And it's a group of receivers that, I'm sorry, to this point, even including tonight, have been overrated. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I
They're not
agree.
getting open enough. They're not catching enough balls. I go back to the Chaz Nimrod drop. Was that would have been against Arkansas? I mean, that completely changes that game. We were told they were going to be 6 deep, and some of those have called us out. And I'll just ask you right now. And if you want to comment, I'll go straight to it. But do you think that for whatever reason, the media overhyped Nico? Now, let's be real clear. It's Josh Heupel who both privately, from people I've talked to, and publicly said he's the real deal. As a matter of fact, he told one person very close to him and within the program, no doubt, he's going to be great. All right, but he didn't necessarily mean right away. And here's the other thing. Practices aren't open. I can't tell you what Nico is doing in practice. So that's a little bit different. So based off of his recruiting ranking, he may have been overcovered by some in the recruiting world that flew out to California to cover a high school game. That's fine. But ultimately, he was hyped because of his ability, and he was hyped because of his recruiting ranking. He was hyped because Josh Heupel never threw cold water on it, Caleb. It wasn't the media that overhyped him. And I would really like to get some of your thoughts in the chat on that before we get to the turning point.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. It wasn't the media that overhyped him. Josh Heupel hyped him. By the way, not just Josh Heupel. Dave, Tennessee gave him $8 million.
Right.
Like this is like saying, like, did we overhype him? Like, okay, when I was in D.C., when Dan Snyder in Washington traded every pick in the history of the world for the next, 3 years to get RG3.
I happened to be in town covering recruiting that day.
Really?
And I remember listening. It was like they had literally just drafted Jesus.
Yes.
And it was bizarre. So, yeah, everybody may overhype. I will still say that he's going to be an all-SEC quarterback. It may be next year. I will still say that he shows up at the Heisman ceremony at some point. I think his receivers have been overhyped. And it's taken Josh Heupel maybe a little bit too long to accept that fact.
I don't know if they've been overhyped or if they're somewhat banged up, so it's slowing down what they want to run. But yeah, the point I was getting with the whole RG3 draft was you can't say media overhyped RG3 with that. When your organization trades everybody to get him, they're overhyping him. You're right. When Josh Heupel gives him $8 million and is going everywhere touting him and basically kind of forces Joe Milton out during the bowl practices last year because he wants to give fans a dose of what they're going to get with Nico. I mean, look, everybody in the organization believed he was a real deal. Guys, I saw the Polynesian Bowl last year. Dave, I wasn't with you full time yet, but I remember I came on the radio show, I came on the podcast the next day, and I said, guys, this is like the perfect fit possible ever for Josh Heupel's offense. And so we all hyped Nico. Our eyes hyped him. The NCAA hyped him because they literally tried to come down on Tennessee and open an investigation to them for him. And Tennessee made Nico the proxy of their fight against the NCAA to take down the NCAA and brag about it. You can't say we in the media hyped him at that point. So, no, we didn't overhype him.
Especially when you have a couple of $1 million in your back pocket and you can choose any quarterback. And I know Arch Manning was in that same class. But had you gone to the Mannings, who do like money, early in the process, and you said, hey, you got the tie here with Peyton. I like Arch more. I got $2 million in my back pocket, and we're attacking this NIL thing. You can't tell me they wouldn't have gotten Arch's attention. They wanted Nico. So if anybody overhyped Nico, it was Josh Heupel.
It's absolutely Josh Heupel. And you're right, Nico's who he wanted. Now, I think Arch, because he wanted to be developed more for the NFL, probably wouldn't have chosen Tennessee to begin with because the Manning family is very meticulous with how they pick. They pick based on their NFL future from their college.
I agree with that. But I still think you would have been more in the running had you said, let's put the band back together with a Manning.
Yes, I agree. You absolutely would have been. And And so I think that, I just don't think you can say Nico was overhyped by us. He was overhyped, or maybe hyped by everybody, and it did start with Josh Heupel. So I'm not gonna say we overhyped him, but look, I still maintain he turned a corner today, and now Tennessee's got to bye to get healthy, and they are. Dave, think about this for a minute. They're a Jordan Ross running into the kicker away from being 7-0 right now.
No, I agree. And Ken, great point. Nico's problems are 100% mental. Other than he's not as dangerous a runner as we thought. I think that's still going to show up. I do believe that's going to show up. Now, he may need 10, 15, 20 more pounds, and he's going to be a big runner I think he's going to be a big runner like Josh Allen. The mental stuff would not have shown up in high school. So thanks for having our back, Ken. As you're right, it wouldn't. And I'll tell you right now, if the offensive tackles don't give up pressure on their inside shoulder, he doesn't have mental issues at this point. I mean, no. I will just tell you, if I drop back every time, I would have mental issues. If I showed up to do this show every day, or Caleb, let's put Caleb in this situation. Caleb, if you showed up to do this show every day, 10 a.m., by the way, hit like and subscribe, turn the notifications on. We'll have Cooper Mays on tomorrow. But if I was 15 minutes late, at some point you would have some sort of mental hang up, like, I don't think I'm getting the support here. So listen, he's taken inside pressure, which is the one thing that Tom Brady and all his crazy meanderings during broadcast says that makes sense. You can't take inside pressure. You just can't.
No, not at all. I agree. And I mean, it's funny that Tom Brady would know better than anybody, because nobody was supported or more supported earlier in his career than Tom Brady was when he was inserted into that game after Drew Bledsoe was knocked out by the Jets in 2001.
But what was the one thing that undid Tom Brady?
It was pressure. Yep, from the inside.
Pressure that got on his knee. And that was the end of that season. And other years that he was bad, that's when he had issues.
Like when he was cussing out his offensive line in the Super Bowl where the Patriots were undefeated and Tom Coughlin just drew up the perfect defensive rush scheme possible against him that day.
Well, let's face it. That defense, like Tennessee, had 4 or more elite pass rushers. So
yes.
I think that's where Tennessee is. And at the end of the day, would you rather have an elite pass rusher or a quarterback who's still 4 elite pass rushers, or a quarterback who's still finding his way, or an elite quarterback and a defense like Tennessee had in 2022? Sorry, if there's a 12-team playoff and they had the defense they had in 2022 and they somehow make the playoff, they're not going to advance with that type of defense.
I don't see how here's the difference. There is no way this defense is losing to an unranked team 63-35. I don't care if they are given the signs from Connor Stallions. They're not giving up 63 points the way that defense 2 years ago gave up 63 points to South Carolina.
All right, update us on our poll question, Caleb. Then we'll have our turning point.
The poll question. After seeing who overhyped Nico? Media, Heupel, Dr. Dre. Oh.
It was Dr. Dre. He gave him the Beats by Dre.
He did give him the Beats by Dre.
No, he didn't. It's way beyond. I mean, Dr. Dre sold that thing a long time ago.
I mean, I hate to make a bad joke, but maybe because he saw Nico in his skirt and thought he was a woman, and, women have gotten Beats by Dre. I'm sorry. Yes. I'm sorry.
Yes. I'm not following that one. All right, so
Dr. Dre literally slapped a woman in the 90s.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, never heard Barnes. That. Look it up.
Okay. I've got other things to do. But, all right, so what was the turning point? I imagine it was the long pass to Dante Thornton. Am I right there?
100. It's the 55-yard pass to Dante Thornton. And guys, here's it's for 2 reasons too. If you remember, Dave, Tennessee's offense have really kind of found a groove. They'd scored a touchdown to tie it up at 7. Alabama responds and goes right back down the field to get a field goal, and it's late in the third quarter, and it's 10-7 Alabama. And also, Tennessee feels very lucky to be only down 10-7 because I'm just going to be honest, the refs missed a blatant holding penalty on that drive before that would have set Alabama up on the goal line that they should have gotten a touchdown out of. And then Nico, it's a 3rd and 6 on the 42. You remember the state? It's 3rd and 6. Tennessee has not been doing well with third north of 5 yards all year long. And Alabama basically said, I don't know what Kalen DeBoer was thinking right here. This is the one thing I'll criticize him for. He just went straight single coverage on the outside on everybody. I mean, he basically said, I'd like that. Tim Tebow could have completed that pass in the NFL. This is what Dick LeBeau did to Tim Tebow with the Steelers in 2011 in that playoff game. It was the easiest read possible to make, and he floated it perfectly to Dante Thornton, and that changed Nico. That changed the rest of the game. The way Nico played.
Okay, you like to call coaches not bright, and some of us have made a living off doing that. But I will offer this up. Did Kalen DeBoer ever really rebound from the illegal injury call, illegal substitution that technically was not a rules violation? I don't think he ever responded from that. I think that he was frustrated. He felt like I'm doing the same thing that like palming the ball like everybody else does. And I still remember one time watching Allen Iverson get called for palming the ball over and over and over. Well, the official that did it was Tim Donaghy. And I felt like that Kalen DeBoer from that point felt like the cards were stacked against him in a game that had a lot of penalties called. That penalty shouldn't have been called, and I don't think he responded well to it. And he still had, a quarter and a half to play.
Yes, no, I think he lost it there. I'm not going to call that unintelligent. I'm going to call that inability to maintain your emotions to get your team rallied around, because I do think the team responded to how Kalen DeBoer acted. But Dave, think about the pressure Kalen DeBoer's feeling. I mean, I think there's an unfair amount of expectations on him this year, given where just the state of college football, and he's just lost to Vanderbilt and Tennessee. And I want to be fair to him on that. I put a lot more blame on him for the Vanderbilt game than the Tennessee game. I think not just losing to Vanderbilt, but having two guys out with the same number run out on special teams, you got to be aware of that.
I thought he was going to get a personal foul too, Nathaniel.
Yeah,
I thought he was going to get a personal foul.
You know what? You know where it's different? Do you remember?
They threw Sonny Dykes out earlier this season of a game. They threw him out of a game.
Oh, they did?
For double personals. Yeah, I've never seen it happen before. You have to do the long walk down the sideline. I think I've seen it happen in a high school ball once.
Well, they did. Do you remember 2 years ago where Nick Saban? It's a meme now. When the Alabama player fumbled the punt return against Tennessee, and that set up Tennessee's touchdown to go 28-10, and Nick Saban lost it more than he's ever lost it on the sideline before. Guy.
I think I remember that.
It's a funny meme. I mean, I've never seen him scream like that. It's weird, but it seemed like after he did that, he was able to rally the troops again to kind of get focused and going. I don't think DeBoer was able to do it. And that is a unique skill that I don't think is it I attack coaches for dumb in-game probability-based decisions. I think I can't say that was a dumb decision. That's just kind of a unique intangible ability, or it isn't. Isn't that fair to say? You either kind of in that moment can or can't do it. Because I'll be honest, I don't think I think he's a great coach and in-game manager. I think Spurrier had a bad habit of losing his team in the middle of games. When he'd throw his visor down and spit and get mad, I think he would lose the team if things were going rough. And they would get worse.
Who else that I thought lost teams during games? This is early pre-Lane Kiffin. And I mean pre-Lane Kiffin at Alabama. But Tennessee almost slipped up and beat Alabama in 2009 because I thought Nick Saban would take his foot off the gas a little bit early at a halftime.
Nick Saban notoriously was not involved in the offense during that time, and he let Jim McElwain run the offense. That's why Tennessee almost beat Alabama in 2009, because Jim McElwain was the offensive coordinator.
Well, you would think that he would shark his way to a victory now and again. All right, for Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave. Turning point.
We got three more things to do. What are you talking about? All right, so let's start with the turning point. Yeah, the turning point was the Dante Thornton thing, but we already did that. Let's go to Torchbearers.
Oh, great. Torchbearers. Here we go. Who wins the ultimate award? As in Circle Park, you will find a person holding a torch. That is the torchbearer, the ultimate award. Who does that go to, Caleb? What do we got?
All right, so number 5 on the list, and he's number 5 and not higher because of the fumble, but Dylan Samson's still on the list. 139 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's a torchbearer despite the fumble.
Hey now.
No doubt. And the fumble, listen, fumbles are never okay, but give them credit. He got hit really hard, and then they tore the ball out. That was group tackling at its best.
That was great. Wow, by a defense you just attacked. But so, all right, number 4. And again, similar to Dylan Samson, Dave, this guy made a few mistakes in this game. He had a penalty and a face mask, but I don't really care. Jermon McCoy, the interception. That is one of, guys, Tennessee has one of the best lockdown corners they have had in it. And I mean, honestly, since maybe Dwayne Goodrich and Jermon McCoy. Dave, that interception, he stayed with Ryan Williams while looking at Jalen Milroe the whole time on that fade in the red zone.
Yeah, and let's face it too. Early in the game, he knocked Ryan Williams around, and he made Ryan Williams question whether or not he wanted to be a part of the rest of that tussle.
Oh, I totally agree. And again, the only reason he's not higher is because he had a couple of penalties. But I think Jermon McCoy honestly played. I'm going from all SEC to all American right now, Dave. If season ended today, I think Jermon McCoy's an all American.
I'm comfortable with that. Okay, so Dylan Samson, Jermon McCoy, give me the rest of your torchbearers because I want to get it as a poll question.
All right, Will Brooks. He had the interception at the end. I mean,
he also did a really good job of filling some empty space because you didn't have Keenan Pili out there. And it's funny, I tweeted out during the game, I said, Will Brooks can't win this game, but he can keep the balls from losing it. I thought he did that early. Now, I know he had the interception late. I wasn't talking about him in pass coverage, but I thought he was a good run fit when T. Lander was still kind of finding his way.
You're right, and that's another reason Jalen Milroe wasn't comfortable trying to take off and run in this game, honestly, is Will Brooks staying home. Gotta love those white walk-ons being able to stay home to stop the athletic quarterbacks from running, right?
That's right. He was a gym rat. His dad was a coach and all that sort of
stuff. Yeah, all the good fundamentals. All right, so a couple more. I think the top two, before I get to the top one, but Dominic Bailey, Dave, did he not have one of the best games you've seen for a player in his life?
He's arguably the most surprising player on this team this year.
He is. I mean, he was incredible. Tyree West was good. Jackson Moy was good. The whole defensive line was good. But Dominic Bailey up on the line was just, I mean, guys, he had 3 hurries, I believe, 2 tackles for a loss. I mean, he was incredible in this game. This is one you get to tell your grandkids about, right, Dave? Like, he's not going to be an NFL player, but you get to go tell your grandkids that you, had a baller game to beat Alabama. And
are you 100% sure Dominic Bailey won't play in the NFL?
I don't think he will. I think he's a little too much of a tweener. Maybe he will. But even if he does, this is the one he's going to tell his grandkids about. This is the game. Forget his NFL wins. And then number one is Dave, do you want to guess who number one is?
Are you going Nico?
No.
The
other superstar. James Pierce Jr. had the best game of the year in the SEC for an edge rusher. And
okay. Here's the 4 I'm going with. No offense to Dominique Bailey, but I've only got 4 slots. The torchbearer MVP was Dylan Samson, Jermon McCoy, Will Brooks, James Pierce Jr. Vote now.
James Pierce was the torchbearer MVP.
Okay, so he was your ultimate torchbearer. All right, so we'll throw those out there. I could make a strong argument for the other 3. McCoy, with the way I thought he took Ryan Williams out of the game. Samson, I thought Tennessee's offense was listless until he broke one in the middle of the third quarter, and it just is a guy that Tennessee can lean on. Will Brooks had the interception I thought was a good run fit in Peely's absence, but I mean, James Pierce Jr. is James Pierce Jr., and I argued this during the week, and I think some people kind of snickered at the column that I wrote. He can be a great leader without being a rah-rah guy. And that's probably going to fall on the Arian Carters of the world, who is that. But just the fact that he's never griped to complain about his lack of sacks and just playing 10 plays against Chattanooga, that's leadership right there, guys.
Leadership. And it finally came for him in this game, guys. He had 1.5 sacks, but the more important thing is he had 3 hurries. And I think, again, James, and I want to give an honorable mention to Joshua Josephs, but because Joshua Josephs had a James Pierce night, Dave. He didn't have a sack. I think he assisted on 1, but he had 3 hurries on the other side. And Tim Banks was using both of them to try to keep Jalen Milroe contained, and it worked. But James Pierce was obviously the one making plays. He definitely was off sides on his 1 sack, but look, that was a bang-bang play. It was very close.
Yeah, and the officials put themselves in a position by so many bad calls that they didn't want to make a really close one at that point.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. So, I mean, it's...
By the way, Boo Carter probably should have been called for a personal foul, but that is the most explosive defensive back that I've seen since Eric Berry.
Yes, and my brother and I were talking on the phone, and he was saying his physical abilities, like particularly in the run game, gives you Eric Berry vibes to a certain degree. And
I agree. I still worry about his maturity, but I agree.
If the late great Monty Kiffin were coaching this team, he would have Boo Carter in the role he had Eric Berry in. Remember when Eric Berry basically almost played linebacker that year? And
Yeah, it was almost the Tampa 2.
Yeah, it was.
Very similar to Tampa 2.
And yeah, so no, Boo Carter is, guys, that dude. I told y'all he's a superstar. And by the way, Dave, he and Christian Harrison were out there together, and Boo Carter, I think, is getting more of the snaps. He's getting more of the plays. Boo Carter is a superstar, and I get it. He was jawing with the player, but like at the end of the day, he did the jawing. He didn't throw a punch. He was the one smart enough to get the other player to throw a punch at him. So I mean, you could maybe play that. I mean, look, I love players that, I know you think I'm crazy, David. I love players that play with that intensity, even if it's somewhat over the line. That's valuable.
Yep, I won't argue with that. I just gotta be careful. What else?
Those are my top 5. Let's get to the report card, and you can tell me if you disagree or agree. Elias, I'm not going to let you get away with saying that. Boo will not make Eric Berry look soft.
No, that's absurd. All right.
Absurd.
Okay. What do we got? Report card?
Yep. Report card. We have the quarterback.
I'll tell you
Dave.
what, before we do that, let me remind you, last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
The first step to better vision is to visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at ccteyes.com.
All right, Caleb, let's get the report card now. Do you want to start with quarterbacks? Caleb, do we still have you? We lost Caleb somehow. Let's get Caleb back on here. Caleb just may have overmodulated himself. All right, Caleb, report card. Who we got? What are we going with quarterbacks first?
Yeah, quarterbacks first, and it's a C+. I think you may go lower, but I think that it was a D until the final 18 minutes of the game, and it moved up to a C+.
I'm comfortable with that. I don't have a problem with that at all. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair.
And by the way, part of the D is not even Nico's fault. Gaston Moore's interception has to count in terms of quarterback play because we're not grading players, we're grading position units.
Fair
and point. Yeah, so I mean, how do you come in for one play and throw a pick? I'm sorry, but he was under pressure. It wasn't his fault.
I mean, again, if you want to go back and look at that play, it was interior pressure that flushed him early.
It was. All right, so running backs A-. Got to put the minus in there because of the fumble.
Yep, no, I'm comfortable with that. Roll on.
All right, wide receivers, again, C+. Now, we have to send a special shout out. He did have a drop, but Dave Brew did have 80 yards, and he is a physical player. And it's something you kept talking about, where he's not going to get the touchdowns a lot of time, but the way he dictates coverage is going to affect how other guys get open, and he did that in this game.
No, I completely agree with that. Hey now. Who's next?
And it's a C+ only because of the drops, by the way, in the first half. That's why it's not a B or anything like that. Next is tight ends. I'm going C. Ethan Davis did have 2 catches, but Holden Stays had a holding penalty. And again, I think there's some discipline issues with this tight end unit.
Yeah, I don't. To me, they're the most disappointing area of this team, and probably why they haven't gone to 12 personnel as much as I would have liked. I mean, based off what I saw the first couple of games, I think they've been pretty disappointing.
Totally agree. I think that's been a problem. But on the other end, and I haven't done this in a while, but last week I said the horrific tackle play outweighed the greatness of the interior. The greatness of the interior outweighed the mediocre play of the tackles in this game, and it was enough for the offensive line, Dave, to get an A-. They're in the A range, honestly. The only play I can point to, and you can tell me if I'm crazy, the John Campbell holding penalty, is that the only play that Campbell or Hurd made that was terrible in this game?
Well, you mentioned the Gaston Moore where Hurd got beat inside.
Okay, yes, that's true.
And I thought there were a couple times they got beat inside in the first quarter, and I thought this was going to be a long night for the Vols. But they remedied it.
They did.
In the game. So I just think that Lance Hurd gets too high early in the game. I think you need to have something really simple for him, almost like a quarterback, just to, he's still young, just get through it. And then I think he'll be better.
I agree. I think that's fair. On the defensive side, let's go to defensive line. A++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++ I mean, Dave, the defensive line has been elite all year. This may be the best game they've played.
Hey now.
I don't have a problem with that. All right.
Next on this list, linebackers. I'm going A, not even A-. I think they contained Jalen Milroe all night, and that's why Jalen Milroe, the goal was simple: keep him in the pocket, and they kept him in the pocket. And you notice if he has to keep throwing from the pocket, he misses really easy passes.
Now, in retrospect, that's probably the only way that Tennessee was going to lose that game, and they didn't even come close to allowing him to beat them.
Yeah, he didn't. They didn't come close to allowing him to beat him, and I think that's the bit. And by the way, remember we said going into the game, we're like, he'll get you that 50-yard touchdown pass. He didn't get it. He didn't get one in this game. His longest pass was 28 yards, I think, which is huge. All right, yes, A Christmas Story. That's what it's from. When the teacher was like, A++++ for Ralphie. Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing for the defensive line. But the linebackers get an A. Defensive backs get an A. Did you see any flaws with the defensive back play, Dave? I go A. I can't say A+, but I can say A.
I'd probably go A+ because the Jermod McCoy interception. I mean, that's a game-changing play.
That's true, but then Ricky Gibson got beat on the exact same play the other side on, like, the next drive.
You're a taskmaster. All right, who's next?
It's an A+. It's still an A. You still got a 4.0 GPA. All right, going into special teams. Kicking is a B. I can't give Max Gilbert an A because he missed 2 field goals, but I can't hold it against him because they were 50-plus yard field goals. And in college, you're allowed to miss those field goals.
Okay. Yeah, I'll roll with that. If that's the NFL, you're talking about a C minus game.
Right, exactly. By the way, they need to narrow the goalpost in the NFL. It's getting too easy to score once you get past the 50-yard line in that league. But I'm sorry.
Let's not get sidetracked. Who's next?
And then next up, we got punter Jackson Arnold. Actually, one of the underrated parts, he flipped field position in this game. Jackson Arnold had 2 punts inside the 20. He had averaged 46.5 yards per punt. And Dave, down the stretch of the game, Jackson Ross, excuse me. Punting is an A because Jackson Ross out-punted James Burnett late. That was a huge difference.
Yep, I agree with that. It was a defensive battle.
Hey now.
All right,
yep.
Who we got left?
And last, we got the return game. Just one return, but it was for 18 yards by Cam Stelton. It was actually average return, so I'm just going C for it because there wasn't anything special.
All right, last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn for Caleb Calhoun. For some reason, his name says Dave Hooker, but there's just one of us here, one Dave Hooker. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. We'll join you on Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern time as the Vols roll into a bye week off consecutive wins to Florida and Alabama. These may be the golden days for you Tennessee fans. We'll see as Caleb tries to fix the name tag.
I really do try to fix the name tag just before it logs off.
I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.